Hello, today we will look at Chapter 6, Section 2 in our textbook. Chapter 6, Section 2 begins on page 164 of our civics or government textbook. And Chapter 6, Section 2 is about powers and roles of the president. And so the main idea of this section is the powers and roles of the US president affect not only the citizens of the United States, but also people throughout the world. There are quite a few key terms: State of the Union address, foreign policy, diplomacy, treaties, reprieve, pardon, and commutation. And two questions we should keep in mind while we look through this section. Number one, what are some of the leadership roles of the president? And number two, what powers does the president have? So, Chapter 6, Section 2 talks about the roles and powers of the president, what the president actually does as she or he is president. Um, Ancient kings had absolute or total power. What they wished became law, but the framers of the Constitution, while they wanted a strong president, they did not want one with unlimited power. So, as commander in chief, for example, the president can send troops to trouble spots outside the country, but Congress must approve the action. While the president can nominate justices to the Supreme Court, Congress still must approve that appointment. So there are checks and balances between our branches of government. The text says that there are three main roles for the president. The president acts as a legislative leader, the commander-in-chief, and foreign policy leader. And I'll scroll back to the legislative leader part. But so really three different roles for the president according to our text. So first, legislative leader. So it is up to the legislative branch to make laws. It is just up to the executive branch to execute or enforce the laws. But the president has a very important role in suggesting to Congress what bills should be introduced into Congress and what laws should be passed. And the president can say, I will veto that bill, and has very strong power in making things never pass Congress in the first place through that power. The president also comes up with his or her own ideas for what laws Congress should pass or what acts Congress should pass into law. And one of the most important ways the president does that in what is the State of the Union address. And so once a year, usually in January, the president gives a State of the Union address where the president says, this is my view for the country, where we should go from here, and here are the laws that should be passed to help us get there. If the president, like Barack Obama did, says that we should expand health insurance to many more Americans and government should do that through different laws, well, he stood up in the State of the Union address, talked a lot about that. Donald Trump said we should bring troops home from foreign wars in his State of the Union address. And then he hoped Congress would help pass laws that did that. So the president exerts and influences Congress by suggesting laws and saying which bills he or she will support. So that is the legislative leader role. Then the president is also the commander-in-chief, which means she or he is the head of the US Armed Forces. All military officers during war or peace ultimately answer to the president. Even though Congress has an important job in passing bills that fund the military, they have the only authority to appropriate money through taxes and then pass laws that spend that money. The president is still sort of the ultimate general of all of the soldiers and all of our armed forces. The president also can send troops to different places, but it is only Congress that can actually declare war. And so Congress still has this very important power, even though the president is still commander-in-chief. And then lastly, the president is the foreign policy leader of the United States. Foreign policy means our country's plan, our government's plan for interacting with other countries in the world. So the president not only leads the United States by saying, here's how the United States feels about other countries, who our friends are, who our enemies are, who will help, who we won't, but the president also appoints diplomats to represent the US government in foreign countries. So ambassadors are the people who go to other countries and carry out the US government's policies there, if the other countries will allow our ambassadors to go. And the president is at the top of that chain conducting what is called diplomacy. And diplomacy is defined as the art of interacting with foreign governments. And presidents can create treaties with other countries, peace treaties, or trade treaties, or anything else. So any written agreement with another country is called a treaty. That's the job of the president because they are the head of the foreign policy of our country. However, there is yet another check and balance. It is up to the Senate to approve a treaty by a 2/3 vote before it ever becomes effective. Then, once the treaty is enacted, it's the president who makes sure it is carried out. So in that way, the president fulfills her or his third role, commander in chief, foreign policy head, and legislative leader of the job. There are some other presidential powers, though, more presidential powers other than just those three mentioned. So one, it is the president who appoints Supreme Court justices and other federal judges, not state judges, but only federal judges. And the Senate still has to confirm those appointments. So just like a treaty, there is a check on the president's power, although in those cases it's only a majority vote of the US Senate. And then lastly, the president has the power to grant reprieves, pardons, or commutations. And so anyone who is found guilty of a federal crime, the president could reprieve their sentence, meaning it is postponed. So if I committed a federal crime, I was sentenced to 10 years in jail, the president could say, we won't make Schusky go to jail yet. He can stay out for another year or 2 or 5. I can also receive a pardon from the president. The president could say, we're just going to completely forgive Schusky of this crime, and then it is erased from my record. I don't have any punishment, and I also don't even have any record that I was arrested or convicted in the first place of a crime. And then lastly, I can receive a commutation, which means the conviction would still stand. There would still be on paper, I was found guilty of whatever crime, but my sentence could be reduced. If I was given a 10-year sentence and I'd served 2 years, the president could say, we'll commute your sentence. You're a free man right now. Schusky, you get to go home. Or the president could say, you have to serve 3 years total. And so I've served 2, I'll have to serve 1 more, but I'll get out 7 years. So that is a commutation. Those are all used by presidents of both parties, although not terribly widely. So those are our powers and duties of the president. That concludes our Chapter 6, Section 2 notes, and thank you for your attention.